Climbing can be such fun. It is such a beautiful sport. Or is it? This story is titled, A Cure for Climbing. These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you. In 1974, Hartbeespoort Dam and the surrounding Magaliesberg district was a respectable place to visit. The dam had not yet become a bustling suburban cesspool where people trade their fast cars for fast boats on weekends and speed over blankets of algae in pursuit of a different, yet the same fast life. I and my friends would often spend weekends there. I was drawn to climbing, and the Magaliesberg had numerous valleys, ravines, and perfect cliff faces for a relatively easy climb, suitable to less experienced, prospective mountaineers such as us. There was a surprising variety of animals, in particular large troops of baboons and an amazing bird life. Here one could find 3 or 4 Egyptian cobras in a day, just a stone's throw from Johannesburg really. There were leopards too, many animals. The valleys were secluded places which cut deep into the mountains. On the valley floor one was in a lost world with beautiful streams strewn with boulders, river stones and logs with pools one could refresh oneself in. The valley seemed tropical and abounded with ferns and tall trees reaching for the sky high above them between the 2 cliff faces. As one walked up the valley, it felt as if no one else had ever been there. On a weekend in 1974, John and I decided to take a walk in one of these valleys. We had walked for perhaps an hour, and the cliffs had become steeper and higher in this narrow gorge. I cannot say how high they were, but possibly 150 meters? Maybe, maybe not, maybe less. John was from England, where he had been a scaffolding foreman in his earlier life. For him, heights meant nothing, like walking on the edge of a pavement. He was game for a climb. It looked like a fairly easy climb, although definitely a challenge. Quite achievable, I thought. One needed to be careful, but we started up the cliff like a pair of rock rabbits, easily finding hand and footholds as we ascended. Soon the energizing climb began to reveal views into the valley and the cliff faces left and right, and these were magnificent. There were ledges like large steps at intervals. Each time we reached a ledge, we would sit, chat, and take in the view. Then aim for the next ledge higher up. Climbing can be deceptive, as I had found out once in the Drakensberg. One looks up, sees the next ledge, and then not too far after that another. Then it appears as if the top of the cliff is right after the last ledge. This is not always the case. Climbing had now become a bit more challenging, but not yet impossible. We had no climbing gear, but even if we had, we wouldn't have known how to use it. We were just amateurs. We also had no means of communication, and not a soul in the world knew where we were except us. We reached another ledge. I stared down onto the unforgiving boulders and logs many, many meters below. This was no place to fall. Up to the next ledge. This was really difficult and dangerous. Then the next ledge, almost at the top, I thought, with adrenaline starting to surge through my body, along with the secret hope that all would work out. When we pulled ourselves onto the final ledge, the nightmare opened up. The height, the view, the scenery, the adventure, the exhilaration, all faded. The beautiful cliff had become an enemy. I felt a low-key panic in the pit of my stomach as the deadly situation slowly became obvious. We were stranded with no communication on a ledge we could not descend from. for the totally uninitiated, there comes a stage where, although being able to reach a point, one simply cannot get back. You cannot retreat. Movement upwards was totally impossible, as the last cliff face was sheer, with an overhang. What faced us was this: no possibility of going up, no possibility of going down. To the right, the ledge tailed off to nothing. To the left was an overhanging rock face protruding over the impossibly deep gorge below. I had seldom been so afraid. To escape, one would have to find whatever grip there was for one's fingers on the bulge of the overhanging cliff face, forcing one out and over the chasm below, and to inch one's way around to where we could not see beyond. Clearly we couldn't stay there forever. Night would come, and then what? We had no protective clothing, and to fall asleep on the ledge was not an option. The slightest wrong movement would have sent us plummeting over the edge. I recall looking down once more and felt as if a magnet was gently coaxing me over the edge. I shut my eyes and forced my back against the cliff face. John was a little concerned, but because of his familiarity with high places, not yet quite in the state I was in. We agreed that if we did not attempt the bulge, there was no hope for us. John decided to go first. He held on to what seemed impossibly tiny protrusions from the rock, his fingers and knuckles white as he inched himself around the bulge, sometimes with both feet hanging and dangling in midair. If there was a dead end, I thought. There were no tears, no regrets, just a deep feeling of loss and helpless finality. John disappeared. I held my breath and I heard him say, "We can get out this side." He was safe. I wasn't. With a supreme fit of determination, I moved up to the bulge, grabbed onto the rocky protrusions he had used, and trembling, moved inch by inch, numbed into deep attention and concentration, mind completely absent. I did not even feel my feet dangling below me as I rounded the bulge with little comprehension and found my feet settling onto the ledge on the other side. We scrambled up a steep grassy slope over the ridge and onto the top. For 10 minutes I walked, ran, jumped and laughed. This was our elated, knee-jerk reaction to the unspeakable fear. Everything was electric and beautiful all round. I stopped and thought, why does life not always look so wonderful? Must I nearly die to be able to see properly? I obviously had a short memory. Some months later I returned, this time alone. I enjoyed being alone. For me it was wholesome, and I didn't really feel alone at all. I walked one of the gorges. The memory of my last climb returned, but not as a deterrent, just as an experience. Many times before, I had climbed these rock faces without any real incident, and mostly I had been by myself. This time I was careful, considerate towards myself. I chose a fairly easy passage up the cliff. There was a deep fissure all the way from the valley floor to the top. I glanced up repeatedly on my ascent. I could not look behind nor below me, as climbing into the fissure, it was difficult to twist one's head right round without letting go too much. The climb remained fairly easy, and I kept glancing upwards to see how much further I had to go. Such folly. The gods must have chuckled at this point. The height of the cliff must have been well over 100 meters. To the left and right of the fissure were steep, flat rock faces. They were quite sheer. This didn't bother me, as I had taken the easy route, up the center, over and out. I was feeling good. The climb became a little difficult towards the top, and I was now once again in a position where I could not retreat. When I glanced up again to gauge how many meters were left, I was drawn to a sound and activity that welded me to the spot. Bees. Millions of bees. My heart sank. There was a beehive right in my path, in the fissure, and they were milling about in a cloud directly above my head. I knew I was allergic to bee stings. That is, one bee sting, not a million bee stings. Stupid, 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 I thought. If the bee stung me, I would peel off the cliff. At least I thought I wouldn't die from a bee sting. Life often presents multiple choices in a situation. In this case, I had only two, left or right, and neither was a good choice. In any case, either side would have taken me fairly close to the bees. I found myself in the state I had been on the previous occasion, with an unenviable fear and with an uncertain future. I don't know why I chose left, but I went left. I only knew each move just before I made it, but managed to cling on. My concentration was so acute that the bees became of almost no significance. Their buzzing increased, and once again they began to dominate my considerations, swarming around in the summer heat. I can't exactly remember reaching the top, but I felt myself scramble over the lip. That is where I sat, dazed for a period. I had been cured of climbing.